Now, you all may or may not have noticed that there are sequences within the TV spots, within some of the scenes that were shown by the Walt Disney Company for Snow White, where Rachel Zegler really comes across like she's holding in her anger when she's doing some line delivery or when she's actually singing some songs for Snow White. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that there were some sequences that actually took a total of 25 takes, where there was a lot of frustration involved, and Disney said, let's just quit it already, let's get it done and over with. And there's a lot of problems there. That's exactly why a lot of those test screenings, 7 of them in total, failed one after the other, is because even the audiences actually thought the same exact thing. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So, Snow White is right around the corner. It is set to be released on the 21st. The actual US premiere, alright, that is supposed to take place in a very short time from now, is already getting very limited. We know that there are actually less questions that are allowed to be asked by different trades, by different, of course, studios out there that want to question more about the movie in particular, and questions about the relationship between both Rachel and Gal are also not allowed. The Walt Disney Company are actually getting involved, making sure that no questions will be asked about anything to do with the drama related to Snow White, anything to do with the changes to the story, how this is all about saving society as opposed to just a regular Disney 1937 Snow White film, as it should be. But let's get into all of this. What's interesting about everything related to this now is that we already know that Rachel Zegler was axed. She was fired essentially from all projects associated with Disney that she was supposed to be involved in. One of them, for example, included voiceover work for Toy Story 5. Now, with the Snow White drama reaching a level that Disney never dealt with before when it comes to theatrical releases, for a live-action remake in particular, one major development that is going on now involves more to do with Rachel Zegler going on yet another tirade after she was finally fired and axed by Disney behind the scenes from multiple projects, like I said before, one of which was for Toy Story 5. Now, Rachel delivered the following. As a feminist and an activist, I think it's very important that we stand up for who women are. We are brave, we are hardworking, and we are unstoppable. And those are the tones we wanted to deliver with Snow White and for her entire arc in this story. I think when you take a closer look at society in particular with fandom culture, you always have to deal with studio politics, and sometimes you are not always going to be on their good side. And so we are seeing a lot of that with our film. We are dealing with a lot of bitter young women and toxic men that have no clue what the story of Snow White means and what it's all about and why we just had to change that story and her background and the meaning of her name. I think both men and women are making a big fuss about Snow White being named after a blizzard. Like, why is that a problem? Oh, I think we know why, and I just don't have to say it now, do I? It spells it out for itself why fans and why newcomers just don't approve of that new story approach of her background. But in this industry, I think women are always left behind, and believe me, I have experienced that myself plenty of times. More often than not, women are treated as less valuable than men when it comes to who you are playing on the big screen, and sometimes it's why I value theater so much, because it's just so different than how traditional studio politics come into play in this industry. But yeah, getting to play Snow White was the chance of a lifetime to express myself and my beliefs in life, and I don't care what people have to think of them or what consequences I have to face for expressing my opinion. This isn't 1937 anymore, this is 2025. But in the story, of course, it's set back, but we had to do something different. We had to focus on our resistance and how we can save society. I think it's how a lot of people feel right now in this country, and so I really do think Snow White will resonate with so many of those, especially American citizens, that feel a certain way of leadership and how sometimes leadership can be abused. So guys, let me just stop here for one moment about Rachel Zegler and how she's really just going on this rampage, like, you know, to no end at this point when it comes to Snow White, to the point that Disney has just given up. Disney has just, you know, said, let's just stop trying to, you know, restrain from the whole situation. Let's just let it go, right? That's how it is at this point. And I think that they know it's going to be a disaster. We know it's going to most certainly be a disaster, both PR-wise and box office-wise. Tickets are not selling talking about pre-ticket sales, of course. A lot of you have been tuning in, by the way, in the comments, and I would definitely welcome more of you below as well to express what you experienced when looking at your local movie theater ticket sales. A lot of people were seeing only two seats were sold in some theater spots. Some were like maybe like 8 here and there. It's pretty bad. I mean, especially for a Disney live-action remake, for a character that is so embedded in pop culture. It's not selling that hot right now, just days before the release of this thing on the 21st. That is a very big red flag, believe me on that. But what's interesting about this further is that she goes on again about her overall view with activism and her overall view with her politics and how that kind of gets incorporated into Snow White. She goes on to state further, you're going to see many examples of that in this film. This is going to truly be one of our finest films, and what I won't tolerate at all are those that want to abolish diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those are just so important to me in my life, and it's what equals fair and balance. Now, look, that's another thing about Rachel Zegler, is that she's always going off about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Maybe not the best idea to start going off about that when Disney apparently wants to dial back on that. I still don't believe Disney. I will never believe in Bob Iger and what he says. It's exactly why I always call him Bob Liger, because he knows nothing but lie to the shareholders, lies to the customers and the audience members out there. It's what he does, right? And he does plan to step down in 2026. Maybe he's just trying to go out with a bang by just saying, let's get rid of DEI for now, this way I don't have to hold that burden, right? But moving on forward, she goes on to close, let me be clear, this is not a story about Snow White. This is a story about saving society and waiting on a wish, and I think all the naysayers and critics will backtrack and decide to watch this magical masterpiece. A magical masterpiece? I don't think so, because this is basically a story based on a character in pop culture, a character that really originated from the Brothers Grimm. You know, I don't know if you guys knew this, I'm sure some of you do, but Snow White didn't start off with Disney's 1937 movie. We actually had the Brothers Grimm tale even before that. And the fact that Disney is really breaking from source material from both of those, I think it just goes to show you exactly what they were willing to do, how far they were willing to go to express their agenda, and to force it on to the general public. And that's exactly why a lot of families, a lot of Disney fans even out there, are boycotting this thing outright. Even Disney fans boycotting this thing, that's when you know you have a real serious problem with this movie, and why. Just why tickets are not selling at all. So again, I think that Rachel Zegler is just creating more issues than good for the press tour of this actual movie, and it's exactly why the premiere is going to be very limited. It's going to be very much more or less of a closed event, where you're not really going to hear or see too much about it. And the UK premiere was cancelled. We talked about that a couple of days ago. The UK premiere was cancelled. That was the first major red flag. We all saw what was coming after that, that the US premiere most likely would be cancelled altogether, or at the very least, like what happened just recently, dial back. And that's exactly what actually took place. But again, Rachel Zegler really just going off about everything to do with saving society, resistance, diversity, equity, inclusion, studio politics, and how she's really sounding very bitter, and this is all coming after what Disney recently did against Zegler behind closed doors. But overall, I would like to hear what everyone has to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for it today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.